Folks, hello and welcome to the Tavern Chat podcast, live stream, whatever you want to call it. I am continuing with the series of Fireside Chats with creators for the ZineQuest. Yes, got it right. I had to double check myself on that one. ZineQuest month. Today we have Thomas Votaw. I should have asked you. Is that the right way
That's
to
right.
pronounce your last name?
You're one of the few that get it right, even though phonetically it's the perfect. People are like a speed bump, right? They see it and they just get nervous and they try to push through it real quick.
My real last name is not 10 cards.
Gotcha.
So my real last name is actually Stina, but most people look at it and they go Stein or Steiny. And it's the I before it. I've had, I think, 3 people in my life get it right the first time out. A 6-year-old girl, a high school history instructor, and a medical doctor from Poland who apparently knows like 7 different languages. And right away went, "You're pronouncing your name wrong." I'm like, "Well, everybody else does." So I figured I'd give it to you the way everybody else pronounces it. "No, pronounce your name right." I'm like, "Jeez."
I'm telling you, the speed bump theory is true. It's The funny part is my wife was a Rajsak. You spell it, she's Polish as well, and it was R-A-J silent C S-A-K Rajsak.
Well,
So
see, the silent letters is what screw a lot of people up, especially when they're consonants.
Yep, right in the middle.
Yeah, it's like, oh, do I pronounce? Is that a hard C, a soft C? No, it's an OC.
Yeah,
you just pretend you don't see the C. So, Thomas, as I've been asking pretty much everybody I've been sitting down with over the last week and a half, how did you get into gaming? I mean, you're pretty established. We'll get to that in a bit, but how did you find yourself joining the gaming hobby and what age?
Yeah, absolutely. So my father was in Desert Storm in the 90s, the late 80s, early 90s. And in the military, he picked up advanced D&D. So when he came home, I think he was permanently out of the military by like 92. So we're dead in the middle of advanced, or coming towards the end of advanced D&D at that point.
Second edition.
Yeah, second wind of, I guess it would be fully second edition. But
yep.
So he brought home monster manuals and DM's guides and everything else. And at this point, I'm 8 or so. So I don't have a real good grip on it. But I kept looking through the monster manuals, sitting on the shelves with his stuff in his office. And I'd flip through them. And as an 8-year-old, there's a lot of, especially the older monster manuals, there's a lot of provocative imagery and monsters, and which was super cool for a young boy who was not really supposed to be going through them, but my parents were one of those things. If I could handle it, I sort of was allowed to do it. We watched Bond movies super young and Airplane and everything else, right? So I didn't play for a while. In the late 90s, I was born in 86. So late 90s, I would have been 14, 15, teenager age-ish. And about 97, 98, I told him, I'm like, I'm sick of just looking through this monster manual and trying to understand the player's guide and DM's guide and stuff like that. I need you to do something for me. And my dad sat me down with my brother and some friends. And he's like, you have washed up ashore and you're on this sort of rock face. What do you do? And I said, what are the rules? And he says, what do you do? And I was hooked right there. I was hooked because he didn't tell me anything. He didn't make us make characters. He didn't do anything. He just said, what do you do? And I said, well, can I do this? He's like, yeah, you can do whatever you want. And I was so used to playing inside the rules of video games or games or anything else that I was like, okay, do I remember anything? And I instantly started that sort of love for role play that I have grown into quite a bit now. And I've been hooked ever since. So I stopped after 3.0 sort of went into 3.5 in the early 2000s. Right. I went to college. I didn't have a ton of time. I was working all the way through college and going to school. And then I tried coming back in 4th edition.
Oh, probably not a good time to come back.
Just like everybody else, I wasn't super excited about 4th edition when I tried coming back. And I put it aside again. And I had my brother, who is 3 years younger than I am, came to me when D&D Next was coming out. And he's like, well, you said you wanted to play, but you didn't want to do this D&D 4th edition. They're working on this new stuff. There's a starter set. So we picked up the starter set with Lost Minds of Phandelver, and I ran that as my first time DMing. And I've played ever since that came out. I've played through most of the pre-made adventures from Wizards at this point. I've played. I am now running most of my own. I've helped with a lot of like the background information for a lot of like what are they called? Not DCCs. The like the convention modules that they run for Wizards of the Coast.
Oh, okay.
So one of the things that I do, we were talking about conventioning for RPGs and gaming and things like that.
Right.
And one of the things I do is I work for one of the bigger convention companies that runs 5th edition. So I run Epic 5th edition at places like Gen Con and Origins and the bigger conventions. So we did for 5th edition, if you're up to date with it, sometimes they do like at the beginning when they announce a new book, they do like the Stream of Many Eyes or the Descent, or they do like a weekend stream and show off everything. Right. And we've been, the last couple of years, we've been able to run that for D&D Beyond. So I've done a lot of that DMing for people who are able to go and play in those games. I get a module and I get to, this year we had to build it all online, which is not really my forte, but we get to go to these conventions and run people through the new content. And it's been a ton of fun.
Well, being wired into the hobby, you're wired in with 5e. I'm more wired in with the old school, but at the same time, I like to know what's going on with 5e because I own all the core books. I think I own everything they published in the first 2 or 3 years before I finally had to back off, because as an old school gamer, I'll take the new stuff and I'll literally strip it from 5e down to Swords and Wizardry or the rule sets I'm going to play on the fly. I mean, it's easy enough to do so, especially with 5e, more so than 3rd edition, more so than 4th edition, because you can see the roots of old school gaming in 5e. I couldn't see them in 4e at all. I will say that again. I've bought every edition, even when I wasn't necessarily gaming. But 4e was the ones that you got. You looked at and you went.
I'm working on it. They're not done yet. This is 3D printing, so that's all that's down here. But I'm working on the rest of it. So.
Oh, okay. So now
I just picked up the coolest thing that I picked up lately is we'll get into it, but I run a gaming store here, and a mint condition i9 Ravenloft came in the door the other day.
Really?
And I'm like, that's not even going on the shelf. That's going to go right back thing. I'm like, how much do you want for it? Because I'm going to give you whatever it was within reason. I'm going to give you whatever you want for this because I'm taking it straight home.
That's fun stuff. My original Ravenloft is beat to shit because I probably ran it a half dozen times back in the day.
Oh, that's Dragon.
But
I don't know where it is. There it is. We got maps and everything, and super stoked about it when it came through the door.
See, I look at how I gained when I was a teen, even my early 20s. It's like, wow, if I'd only thought about how valuable some of this stuff would have been if I hadn't, kept track of the hit points in the module itself, in pen or pencil. It made no difference, whatever I had. And I was just crossing stuff because you didn't think it was going to be collectible. And the hobby has turned into a huge collector's market. So now we spoke before the show, and you actually own a retail store for the hobby. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I don't personally own it. I run.
Oh, you sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. I just don't want to. If I know I've posted the live stream and stuff like that, I don't want it to come off like I am saying above what I am. No, you're good. I run the entire RPG, board games, all that section.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I never was planning on being in the hobby as like an employee or a management or anything like that. I did this as my fun thing. I used to be a project manager for a health company.
This is a hell of a change for you. I think it's a positive one. But
so
yes.
about 5 years ago, I had our company got bought. I got laid off with a nice severance package, and I didn't know what to do. So I was painting on the side with a friend of mine, from a college friend, just making extra summer money and things like that. And I had just had my first son. And I said, it's not worth it for me to go back to working 75 hours a week, no matter how well I'm being paid. So I did a painting company for about 5 years. And by the time in 5 years, I destroyed both my rotator cuffs.
Ooh.
So the second rotator cuff, I was painting this game store for my friend who owns the company. And he says, so what are you going to do once you have surgery? Like, this shoulder already doesn't come past like here. Now the other shoulder won't do it either. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, we're doing okay. My wife has a really great job. The best part about painting has been that I've been able to sort of make my own schedule with the little ones. I have 2 kids now, both my oldest just turned 5 yesterday. So I get to sort of make those times so I can be there for baseball practices, and I can be there for doctor's appointments and everything else. And I said, I don't know. I'm not sure what I want to do. And he said, well, we're opening this bottom section. We're moving on from more than just a couple of games in Magic. We're opening up this huge thing. And he laid it all out for me. He's like, I don't have any interest in being here from noon to 9 every single day when I'm doing everything else as well. And I said, well, maybe that would work. And we talked it out. And I've done that for the last year and a half. And it's fantastic. It is the coolest thing. There's no stress. Every day is super easy. I take the time that I need. I work when I want, not work when I want. Of course, no retail place would work that way, but I have people that can cover.
You know when you need it.
So it's been fantastic. It's been a blessing because I make a little bit less than I did, but in the long run, I am much happier with the time that I get to spend with friends and family, and I get to be around, especially with being a content creator, which we'll go into. I get to see people who are interested in our product every single day.
You know, and that's a huge part of it. When you work a job that you enjoy, it seems like less a job.
100%. As I said, there's been one day that I didn't want to go into work, and it wasn't had anything to do with work. It was just I was in one of those funks where it's just like, yeah, you know what? I could just sit in bed all day.
It's a mental health day.
Yeah. And I've been there for a year and a half, and I've never been in that position where I've not dreaded going into work, at least sometimes, right? No matter what you do, there's days where you're just like, yeah, today I'm going to go, but today I don't feel like it. So I had a lot of those days. Yes. As a project manager, so did I, right? So it was, I drove into the city of Cleveland every day. So it was a 45-minute drive at 2 a.m. But if I drove it at normal work hours, it was like a 2-hour drive. So it was get there before rush hour and then leave after rush hour. And I'd only spend 45 minutes in the car each way. Otherwise, it was like if I left anywhere between 3:30 and 5 o'clock, I sat in the car the exact same amount of time that if I left at 6 o'clock.
Oh, yeah.
It was just insane. I'm sure you're in New York City. I'm sure you're used to that kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I used to have to. I mean, I would commute from Queens, one of the outer boroughs, into Lower Manhattan, and the best hours I actually had were when I was working overnights. When I was working 9:30 till 6 a.m. I was going against any kind of rush hour traffic, and there wasn't any. And even leaving at 6 a.m., nobody was leaving the city. Everybody was coming into it. So I'd be home in 25 minutes. But when I was working days or evenings and New York City just congests, you'd have to say 45 minutes to an hour and 15. If there was an accident, it could be worse. It was horrible. So the best commute is the one I have now, where I just get up and I walk to my desk over here. But hey.
Nice. I once got caught in New York City rush hour traffic with a expedition pulling a trailer with an engine on the back of it. And I almost parked it and just walked. I'm like, I'm done.
You might have gone, depending on where you were, you might have gone faster walking.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a sad reality of in New York City, not necessarily during the midst of COVID. COVID is certainly, especially early COVID, everything was
Ghost town.
empty. Oh man, I was on Long Island Expressway at like 9 o'clock one morning, and I'm like, this is like post-apocalypse. I mean, where the hell? Because you are used when you don't see what you expect, when you just see a handful of cars at a rush hour, it is disturbing. And in a way, it was good. I got to where I was going to go even quicker than my Google Maps was telling me it was going to. It's like there was nobody out there, but you get used to that routine. And the best routine I got used to was, I don't necessarily like working the overnight shift, but the commute is so much easier. I think I like it.
It might be worth it.
Yeah, it might be worth it. Don't have to see anybody and don't have to deal with traffic, and all you got to do is learn how to sleep with the sun out, which wasn't necessarily easy, but goes back to your Ravenloft. You got to be a bit of a vampire to do that crap, I guess. But
I guess so.
So now you've been involved on the retail end for a year and a half, but how long have you been involved as a creator? Because you got your fingers in a couple of different pies.
Yeah.
So this can't be it just can't be your first step out of the gate. You have to have been doing this for a little bit.
So this isn't. So if your viewers remember, you interviewed a friend of mine, Zach Goins, is actually my business partner. He's working on Scrap Rats, this ZineQuest. So what we're doing is we're working actually on two different projects. This is not the Kickstarter from It Came from the Message Board is actually on a different account. So it says that it's our first Kickstarter, but the Drifters Atlas is our company, and we are at 7 or so Kickstarters that we've had our fingers in, and we raised almost $200,000 in backing last year.
Damn.
So I have been a creator since like April 1st of last year. I knew Zach from the convention scene. As I said, we did the convention games for Wizards of the Coast and Baldwin Games. And we did Winter Fantasy, which is the first weekend of February in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And we came home, and that's when things started hitting the fan with COVID. Things started to get bad and everything else. And I'm lucky enough that I am in a position where I can help others succeed, meaning that I have I'm not rich by any means, but I'm making enough money that I can throw a couple bucks at my friends' projects to make sure they're doing well, right?
Right.
My wife has a great job. I had a great job for a while. I now have a job that I absolutely love, and it doesn't matter what I'm making. So Zach posted a Patreon that he set up, and he said, I just want to write. He's like, I think I'm doing a very good job. People have been having me in as a writer. I want to do this for myself. And I said, hey, for $5 a month, it's a no-brainer for me to, hopefully I can help my friend succeed.
Right.
I throw away $5 a month on lunches or Starbucks or whatever it may be, right?
You do that in a day.
Yeah. Sometimes double or triple that in a day for things that I could have solved. So I said to him, like, absolutely, take it. Done. And he made a Discord channel, and in the Discord channel he was talking about like what do people want him to do next and everything else. He was asking for like ideas, and I told him what I've always wanted for my idea is a world building stream like this one, but where people come in our chat like David is now and say, hey, what if this part of the world was this? So what we do is on every Tuesday night at 10 o'clock, we do a world building stream on the driftersatlas.com on Twitch. And we have a group of people that come in and they help us build our product. So what they do is while we do all the work on the like storylines and everything else, they help us build the lore for the world. And what's really cool about that is that in my mind, if I can give you a personalized continent, a personalized world to play in, you're going to become a buyer.
Well,
If you
definitely,
say Tenker's Tavern in the city of Filigree, if that's there in the book and you can pick off your book off your shelf and there's a Tenker's Tavern because you were in our stream, you become a purchaser of all of our products. And I don't say that in a bad way. I think marketing can be good for everybody.
right.
It gives you something that had no cost and you get to see your character live on or whatever it may be. It also helps us build a dynamic world that people are actually enjoying, and it's not just Zach and I in an echo chamber. So we started working on that, and we've done that every week, and we've had a Kickstarter for what we called Motherload, which is a zine that we did in the summer last year. And it is the first adventure for Ostawin, which is our continent that we're building, and it is 1 through 3, and that did very well. It funded in 48 hours.
Nice.
So that was the first project we worked on together. Zach had a little bit more pedigree than I did coming into it, and he had some projects that were successful before that. And then this will be my third. So I am, as I said, I run a game store, and Brett is the one. If you go to our Kickstarter, it came from the message board. It's under Brett Hess. And Brett Hess is actually a customer of mine at Freedom Hobby and Games. And he had been running a campaign for the last 2 years in our store, a homebrew campaign that was like a series of interconnected one-shots that all came from the message board. So as the town grew, the players would go to the message board and see what the players in the town needed. And sometimes those players would be setting them up for failure. Sometimes they wouldn't. So I said, hey, I love this idea. I love the idea that there is a message board. It really feels like the city's alive at that point.
Right.
Because one of the things that at least I know I have a hard time with is building out from the main plot in a city, right? Because I know my players are chaotic.
Herding cats.
Every single DM knows that, right? Anybody who's DM more than 5 minutes knows that if you set up everything in a town, you've wasted 12 hours of your life because they're only going to hit 2 places and they're going to be gone.
Right. Or they'll find the one.
The one place that you don't hit.
Right. That one. They'll find that one path that you didn't plan for. It's like, why did they pick that one? So yes.
What happens if I crawl to the bottom of the well? Okay, I didn't think about that one. Let's take a second and figure it out. So he came to me when we started working on things, and he said, hey, I love this idea. Do you think that this could work? And I said, well, the way we test this is Zach and I were talking about what we wanted to do with ZineQuest last year. And Zach was super excited about it because we're working on this sort of system agnostic 5e rules. So like a tier 0 rules.
Right.
And so I wanted something that wasn't fully connected to 5th edition. So it came from the message board, has 5th edition supplemental information. So what I mean by that is it has some new monsters. It has some new magic items. But mostly it's meant to be put in any high fantasy setting. So it can be thrown into Greyhawk in that situation. The point of it came from the message board is it's a supplement used for a DM to bring their characters back to the story arc that they want to tell. So we have
pretty handy.
Yeah. So I was getting so sick of seeing my players on the 3rd day shopping episode, right? Which I hate. I don't like creative characters that have to. I don't like creative characters where you have to get a bunch of stuff in the beginning. I don't like it when a shopping episode takes. I mean, I understand that they're necessary throughout the campaign,
right?
But I want them to take an hour. I want them to take 2 hours. I've played in games where they've taken an entire session or 2, and you're like, come on. I just want to get back to something, right? I don't care if it's fighting. I don't care if it's RP. I don't care if it's story progression. I just want to get back to something that has meat. And it came from the message board, does just that. So it came from the message board is 25 quests before stretch goals and everything else.
Right.
In those 25 quests, it is set by tier level. So that is done by levels 1 through 4, and this is how they tier off for Wizards of the Coast for 5th edition. So it's set, all the quests are set by tier 1, 2, 3, 4, and they explain that in the instructions, and it says there are 10 quests for tier 1, which is levels 1 through 4, because I think most of us play in tier 1.
Right.
There are 5 quests for both tier 2 and tier 3. So that is 5th through 10th level, and then 11th through 16th level. So that's our 20 quests. And then we have 2 quests for tier 4, which is 17 through 20, because most people already have a story told when you get to that level, if you ever get to that level.
Right. Most campaigns seem to implode for one reason or another before then.
And then there are 3 like role play quests. One of my favorites is that you've met this eccentric dwarf that's not allowed in the drinking competition anymore. And all of his partners have left him to go join other drinking teams. And he has put a message board out that says, hey, I know I'm looking for people to join my thing. I can give you this, this, and this. Or I can introduce you to the city, whatever, if we win. And so every quest is not meant to be a one-shot. It's meant to be a bridge. So my favorite one is what we have at one of my favorite quests in the entire book is a quest that's in our downloadable PDF. Because we have 2 quests at sample. And the quest goes that you are traveling into town and you find the message board. And the lord of this town tells you that he is looking for people as an emissary to go visit this castle in the mountains. And the castle in the mountains, and this is a tier 3 quest, the castle in the mountains wasn't there 2 weeks ago, but he wants to send a writ and let them know that they have come through his land without asking, that this is not, he's being kind and he wants to parlay, but really get the hell off of our lawn. And so he sends food and some potions of flying and things like that, so you can get to this castle in the high mountains. And what you find out is the castle is not in the mountains; it's a stone or a cloud giant city. It's a cloud giant castle, and so the cloud giants are looking for this legendary artifact that they've lost, which is what we call Comet Fall. And in the description, it says Comet Fall cannot be wielded by anybody but a giant, or else it's just a +1 great sword. So what they say is, hey, I get it. We're in your territory, but we're not leaving until we find Comet Fall. Right. You can either help us find Comet Fall, and we will give you this awesome great axe made by the fire giants that anybody can use. Or you can piss off and we'll do what we want. We're cloud giants. So with that, the hope is that players go back, and it describes this. The players go back and talk to the king again or the lord again, and it sets them up to find this legendary artifact. So you can tie back into this legendary artifact to whatever your story arc is. Instead of saying, hey, this is the quest you're going to do, this is what's going to happen, everything else, it leaves it open-ended on both sides. Right. So you can drop it in anywhere. You could drop this in a desert, you could drop it in the mountains, you could drop the legendary artifact across the world. Whatever it is, you could make this a two session quest afterwards to find this artifact. You could make this a 20 session quest afterwards. But the hope is that it gets your players and sort of hooks them back into the story you're trying to tell. And the best part about it is that they get to actually get, the hope is that they find this legendary artifact that isn't really any good for them. So I know at least my players are like, why wouldn't we just keep the loot if it's cooler than the loot we're going to get?
Right.
So this item that I have come up with is, it doesn't help them. A +1 greatsword at level 12 or 13 doesn't make any sense. The axe they want to hand them is a very rare great axe that we call Volcanic Scar, and it's a great axe that is a +2 weapon. It works like a flame tongue almost. And then as a bonus action, you can leave a wall of flame behind the wielder, and he gets disadvantage on the first attack against him. So this weapon, that's this legendary item that your players would be like, why don't I keep this? This is obviously worth more money. Well, it's only a +1 greatsword unless you hand it back to the giants. Unless you're going to parlay these to other giants, this sword means nothing to you. But it could be this huge quest because you know it's this legendary weapon. It's like a Wand of Orchist, right? Most people can't carry a Wand of Orchist. But you could see a whole line of quests going up to finding this Wand of Orchis that's been lost.
Right.
So that's what we've tried to do with all these quests, is even things all the way down to first level quests aren't, hey, you go here, you do this, you get this, you come back, you get this. There's a lot of that out there already. What we want to do is say, hey, this farmer has a hard time with his grain. He can't keep it in his barn. Something's stealing it. And then give you options on how you can tie this into your story. So that could be bandits. That could be something like Kenku, or if you're outside, if you're in the SRD, you can't use Kenku. So something like a Tengu or kobolds or anything else. And there's just a quick blurb that says, hey, if this is bandits, think about this. Or, hey, if this is Kenku, and maybe they're using mimicry to throw you off the set to like trap you and attack as an ambush if you come into the woods after them. And so the hope is that then this will give the DM just enough to hook their players back into what they actually are trying to do without building out that entire city and hoping that the players fall on where they want to go.
Well, and it's great too because it's inspiration, and God, again, even when you hook your players, it doesn't always mean that they're going to be hooked. They always look for the new shiny. That's the OK squirrel deal. Mm-hmm. But even with that, it's an inspiration. It's a starting point, and you don't have to get too far ahead of the game. If your players don't follow it, well, you've got another 24 hooks to look at and stuff to play with to see not just what strikes the GM's fancy, but what will strike players' fancy and bring them along.
Yeah, and it's built, as I was saying before, it's built to have, with the role play hooks, it is built to have 18 of those 25 quests in the first 10 levels.
That's pretty damn good.
It's 10 in the first 4, and then it's 5 in the next 5 through 10, and then you also have those 3 role play levels. So as a DM and then a convention DM and everything else, I know just how many people get past that 10th level.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not all that much. So we wanted to make it feel like a DM doesn't have to get this and be like, oh, man, all my games are at first level. I've only have 2 to choose from. The hope is that most of these are going to play those first 18, and the lucky few will get the other ones. Or they'll turn them into one-shots or something like that.
Well, that, or if you're an experienced DM, and you can usually change appropriate levels. You can up the power levels, down the power levels. I mean, I'm fond of DCC RPG adventures, but the power level for them compared to, say, Swords of Wizardry is huge. But converting on the fly, especially if you're going to take power away from something, if you're taking something that's meant for a higher level and bringing it down to a lower level, it's a lot easier than going the other way, because the balance naturally goes down as you lower it, as opposed to going up where it becomes, did I just close a TPK? Or just as bad, is my party going to just walk through this, take no damage, and not even be challenged?
That's what I'm always worried about.
Yeah.
It's just making it too easy. I know that if I bring something super heavy, I can always, if I realize halfway through the battle it's super bad, I can always cut some, or I can cut some HP if I brought in something that's super huge and I'm like, okay, maybe they weren't ready for all of this yet, right? So I cut some of the reinforcements, or I figure out something that still makes it hard for them because I'm not a DM who just lets people win.
Right.
But I am a fair DM, I would say. I have no problem wiping a group, whether it's my home group or if it's a convention group. But I also want them to have the answer, right? I'm not the jerk DM who's like, well, this didn't happen, so we're just going to let that thing slam through you. So.
Yeah, that's a whole other...
we could talk about that for an hour.
Yeah, because, and I'll say, and I think I've touched on this with others, but when it's, you don't want to kill the party because you as a DM fucked up.
Yeah,
you know,
100%.
You know, it's one thing. It's like, well, the dice screwed the party. All right, but did the dice really screw the party, or did you have an encounter they could not reasonably avoid? You didn't give any hints they should avoid it, and it was overpowered, and you slammed them. Because that's not enjoyable for the players, and in the end, you might not have a group, so it won't be enjoyable for the DM. So yeah, I could do episodes on that, but yes.
One of my favorite convention stories was a party that was split. I got some really bad reviews and some really good ones from the same group, and it's so funny to see. We were running part of Rime of the Frostmaiden when it first came out for D&D Live, and the convention modules are very, hey, railroady, you'd come here, you do this, you do that, and you move on. They have to be. Yeah, they have to be, because you are trying to give the same experience to not only everyone at your table, but every other table that's running it as well.
Right.
Because there's going to be another one that follows up, and hopefully everyone is close to the same experience when they go from my table to your table at a convention, and then pick back up the story. We are going through the woods, and there's mangled bodies, and it's an owlbear that's been led up to this whole time. And you have this lackey that's following you, and they say, "Oh, you need to move on. We need to figure out what you are sent here to do." And these people are like, "Well, we got to find the owlbear." I'm like, giving them hints the whole time. Nope, you can't find the owlbear. It's too dangerous. You guys are level 1 or 2. You guys have to move on and figure out what you guys were actually doing, like through the NPC.
Right.
And they're like, and they were getting the hint, but they weren't getting the hint. So they're like, we see what you're doing there, DM, but we got to find the owlbear.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. So finally the NPC's like, I'm not sticking around. I'm not going to fight this thing. Last time I saw that thing from a distance, I peed myself. I can't do it. And so he runs away. And the players still trudge right on. And I described this giant black owlbear covered in blood and gore. And I said, well, it doesn't look like it's gore. And they're like, we're going to sneak up on it. We're going to start. And I said, okay. And I knew that it was just going to eviscerate this party.
Yes.
And I said to the first attack hit the druid because they didn't have anything in more than medium armor. Hits the druid and brings it from full life to almost completely like insta-dead in the first hit. And people are like, what do you mean it did that? And I said, well, Lucas, the NPC, told you guys multiple times that he's not going anywhere near that thing, that the task is to go over here.
Right.
And for 4 rounds or something, it just ran around this clearing, murdering PCs. Which was, and some of the PCs absolutely loved it. Like, yep, we walked ourselves in. That was us being dumb. It is what it is. And then 2 of them were like, he didn't give us a shot. I'm like, well, the shot didn't come in the fight. The shot came 40 minutes before that when I told you there's no chance.
You know, and I'll say, and I would like to think that most old school gamers would pick up on the hint and go, this is something that maybe if we were higher level, you'd come back. But obviously we're not ready for it because balance in old school games isn't as, I don't want to say formulistic, but there is, I guess, a formula for 5e to make sure that your encounters are relatively balanced and there's a progression that goes. And yes, obviously the dice and random chances go into affect it, but you should have an idea. And I think that some of your players there were stuck on the idea if they would never give us an encounter that we don't have any chance against.
Yeah.
No.
Fifth edition is definitely balanced towards success. And it's
Okay.
so the reason, and we talked about where I started, the reason I love fifth edition isn't because I love fifth edition, the system as well. I love fifth edition because I run Adventure League and I run convention play. And I can get anybody playing fifth edition in 45 minutes.
Well, there you go.
Because you can get somebody from 8 years old to 80 years old understanding I roll 2 d20s and I take the greater for advantage.
Right.
I roll 2 d20s and take the lower for disadvantage. I roll 1 d20 and add the plus that's on my sheet right in front of them. That's super easy. And that's why I love 5th edition, that it's really cut and dry. They've done a good job of customization just enough so you still feel like it's your character.
Right.
But for the adventure leagues, the convention running, getting new players in, I don't think there's an RPG that has been easier to learn.
Well, you need the consistency, and you need something that's going to be run the same way at each table. In theory, when AD&D first edition came out, it was supposed to bring that consistency to convention play that the original D&D and Basic did not have. That certainly didn't happen, because the first thing groups did was take out the rules that made no sense to them. But 5e is consistent, and it is, for the system, it's balanced. And I think at convention play and organized play, you need something like that. You don't need something that's very swingy or open to interpretation. Old school gaming is certainly not made for organized play.
It's also unforgiving. Old school gaming, one of the reasons I love old school gaming, we're playing a campaign that starts at just like the red box and it goes all the way through, and as you go to the next edition, you play the children of the players that you were playing before.
Okay.
And one of the reasons I love old school gaming is because it's just so brutal.
Oh, yeah.
It can be so brutal. Tomb of Annihilation and those kind of things where like you just expect to die over and over again.
Yeah, and that is part of the fun of it. Now, for me, at convention play, I run Swords and Wizardry Light. It's a 4-page adaptation of Swords and Wizardry that I put together a couple of years ago. But I like it because it allows players to come to a convention. I can hand you the rules and say, you got 15 minutes, we'll be up and running with your own character. I'm not giving you a pre-gen, because that, I think, means more investment by the player into what you're playing. And if you survive 2 sessions of convention play, you'll be second level. Just keep the character sheet and bring it back. But I think you either need a very simple rule set to do that, or you need a very consistent rule set. The area in between does not work so well with that, because, again, you need something that plays fast and plays consistent. Consistent is the key. And 5e is a pretty well put together, consistent system. I know it well enough that I could be in a game with a player and I'd have fun. I do not know it fluently. I could not run it, and I will freely admit that. And I always believe that fluency in a system is the key to running, especially at a convention or organized play. Your players
100%.
expect you have to know that system. You have to be fluent. You just can't be a journeyman in the system. You need to be able to know what the rules are and exactly where the rules are in the book in case you need to look something up for clarification, as opposed to
we're just going to go with this today.
Yeah, you can't have that. So
yeah, you're absolutely
right. Thomas, it came from the message board, but actually, I think you're involved in another Kickstarter that's coming out later on this month.
I am involved in a couple this month. So Zach has the Scrap Rats, which I'm a collaborator on. I'm already a backer, by the way, just so folks out there need to know. It looks really good. Yeah, I'm super excited. We got to play it. We do our company does a gaming like retreat once a year. So we did, Zach and I and some other people that work for us took 2 weeks and basically fully quarantined, and then met up, the 5 of us, at this cabin in the middle of nowhere, Illinois. And we played, I think, like 3 sessions of Scrap Rats. And I think I laughed till I cried in at least one part of every single one of them.
There you go.
So Scrap Rats is fantastic. the big thing that Drifters Atlas does is Zach and I really wanted to. We have a bunch of friends that are making great stuff, but they didn't know how about to go through the Kickstarter process and the post-production process and the publishing and the shipping and everything else. And that's something I have a huge background in with my PMP and project management.
Okay.
So what we do is we are trying to help other people get their projects off the ground. So Zach is a writer on Lights of Winthrop Manor, which just launched this morning.
Oh, it did. Okay. It
Yeah.
hadn't launched when I last.
Yeah, just right before we started. Actually, I think it launched at like 10 a.m. Lights of Winthrop Manor is almost like a escape room, Scooby-Doo mystery, haunted mansion kind of feel. And you've been invited over for dinner, and at this dinner, things sort of turn bad fast. And Drifters Atlas has been lucky enough to not only do some writing and editing on it, but we're also going to be a carrier of it. So when we can start doing cons again, it'll be in our booth. It has been awesome. I backed it. I think I was one of the first backers. I backed it as much as I could because I'm super stoked about all the stuff it comes with. Of course, we talked about Message Board. Message Board is my project with Brett Hess. Brett and I have each written almost exactly half of the quests because we wanted to have this be like a light, fun Kickstarter that we worked on. And then I do all of the 3D printing for like our premium tier at my work. So we have some minis and things like that. If you really want to throw yourself into Message Board and use it as one shots or anything like that, we have a premium tier that has some like printed minis and some voice assets and virtual tabletop maps and things like that.
Very cool.
Then at the end of the month, we are launching our follow-up to Motherlode, which is it's not technically ZineQuest, but it is where Motherlode was 1 through 3rd level adventure for our continent of Ostwin. This is the 4th through 6th level adventure as it continues that story, heading to our hardcover book at the end of the year.
Oh, okay.
The hardcover book is it's a 1 through 12 adventure, so it'll take another track to level 6, and then the 2 tracks will meet up, and it'll go from 6 to 12. But it also has all the lore for our continent, so it has everything we've worked on our streams, everything we've done, and we don't have a date for that, but probably fall.
Well, so keep me in the loop. You know how to reach out to me. I'd love to cover it and know more about it.
Awesome, yeah. If you want to hear a quick secret, I just thought of what I'm doing for ZineQuest next year.
Oh,
I know it's a long time away, but let me throw this at you.
They've already been talking about it in the ZineQuest community.
Oh, really?
Who's getting ready? Oh, yeah. Somebody put a post up, I think, early this morning or late last night.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
so here's what I want to do.
All right,
here's what I want to do. And I don't know if it's going to work. I have no rule set for it. I have no anything for it yet. But I want to make... You are a player in a town, and it's going to be our class 0 rules, our commoner core rule set.
Right.
You are a person in a town. It's going to be a single player RPG. You can play it with multiple, but it's going to be set for single. You have an heirloom. You have a sword. You have a teapot. You have a cauldron. You have something that you procured. Either you have it and you don't know you have it, or your family left it to you or something. And the word has gotten out that you have this valuable item. So people come knocking at your door, and at first they offer to buy it. And then they try to steal it. And then you realize that you have this valuable item, and you have to build the protection around this item. So the idea is that you are the person building the dungeon, and the adventurers are coming to take this item from you. So as these waves sort of come, you'll have tables in your zine that show you, like, I build a moat outside of my house outside of town. I build a hole in the basement and take it back in. So basically the hope is that by the end you have built a dungeon and you're trying to stop adventurers coming in, and you've become the bad guy. You've become the person that is guarding this loot of whatever kind, and these adventurers are coming in to get the loot from you. And just it's silly, but I feel like it could be a fun play.
Well, it's almost like you're going to play as a player. You're going to be playing the role of the DM, and the DM is going to be reversing the role as a player.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? That could actually work.
Have you ever played the game Boss Monster? It's a
I own it. Game. I own it. Never played it.
So the idea of it is that you are playing. So I'm playing against you, and you're sending your adventures through my dungeon, and I'm sending mine through yours. And the hope is that I can build a better dungeon than you can before you lose so much points, basically.
Okay.
So I'm thinking like reverse engineering it. So you are literally building out this dungeon, and after you make some rolls, then the players come with another wave. And as they come, they get better and better because you're getting more and more gear too. Because if your dungeon kills a group of adventurers, you now have everything they had.
Right.
So now you're hiring maybe thugs to guard your house. You're you're building a moat. Maybe you're making this something else. So it's literally at the very basic stages. But my hope is that we can make a one-person RPG that you could play in 1 or 2 hours, just sitting sort of there, rolling and sort of building it out and talking about how this works. And there'll be different charts so the players don't have to invent it. But The hope is that we can get to a point where you're like, okay, turn the next page, and that there's enough charts that it changes every single time you play. So you could play this 10 times and your dungeon doesn't end up the same.
Now, what would be nice is if you could use those dungeons you create and save them for an actual D&D campaign.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, because there's going to be rules for traps and everything, right?
Yeah. So it becomes a dungeon building mechanism in addition to an RPG. If you get a twofer from it, then you're really ahead of the game.
Yeah. I was looking at ZineQuest this year, and I was trying to see what was doing very well. And doing very well is not high titles, meaning not D&D, not Pathfinder, not whatever. Doing things, unique items, but also what is done well in a couple different places are these solo RPGs, especially in a COVID world where we can't get out, right?
Yep.
So if you have a game where you and your wife are playing, or you and a friend are playing, you could play 2-player against the players, but it's not meant for 7 people to sit around a table and play. So just something fun.
Oh, I actually would back that. So there you go. I think I something like that would work. My niece is 10. She would be 11. She started building dungeons with Dwarven Forge when she was 6.
Nice.
And telling you, well, that's a trap. Looks like it's a treasure, but it really isn't. The treasure is hidden over here. That's to kill the adventurers. I'm like, you've never played D&D. How do you know this? But it's like instinctual, and you just gotta look up. So she would be having a blast with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely sign me up, man. Sign me up.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Well, Thomas, thank you for joining me. I really taking time out of your morning on a weekend isn't always the easiest. I do appreciate it. I will include links to the current projects in the show notes on the podcast side for those that are listening. And for those that are listening live, I got, let me see, 7 p.m. Joel Hines, Desert Moon of Karth. And at 9 p.m., Rachel, my lovely wife Rachel, and I will be doing a live stream for Gamers Health. It was well received last Friday. And God bless, even Luke Gygax commented and watched on it. So we're going to move it to Saturdays because I already got live streams on Fridays. So
nice. Joel reached out, was one of the people that we interviewed for our stream that we were talking about. And Joel, Drifters Atlas is going to distribute all his zines this year. So Say hi to Joel for me. He's a super nice guy. I think you're going to have a blast with him. He's built sort of a Western just a teaser for all you people coming up and watching it again. He's built like a Western setting for Mothership, and it looks super cool. I'm super excited to see it.
Well, there you go. Well, again, Thomas, thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend.
Luck with it all. And as David Thompson. Now, by the way, I'm going to do a quick shout out to David. David's been enjoying these afternoon live streams because he's out there on the other side of the pond. So these are actual normal hours for him, as opposed to the evening live streams where he has to stay awake and hurt himself. I
will say, David, if any of these strike your fancy, I'll put in a quick bid that Scrap Rats, I came from the message board, Lights of Winthrop Manor, and Desert Moon and Karth are all going to be shipped from here, from my house. So if you're interested in any of those, back them and we'll do one shipping for all of them. So if there's something you're interested in any of the things we do, or reach out to me through my Kickstarter, it came from the message board or anything, and we can talk. I'm happy to work with people overseas. It's been so hard, especially with Brexit and some other things, getting some of that stuff over into United Kingdom and into Europe. So,
it's just hard overall with the cost of shipping. So if you can consolidate it, you're saving cost. Or it helps everybody. Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, again,
thank you so much, Eric.
You're very welcome.
We'll talk soon.
We'll be back later.